Great. Thank you, Natalia. We've also been doing brief introductions in the previous breakout rooms. I think we could go ahead and do that just for everyone to know who else is in the room. I can start. I'll just provide my name, my organization, my position, and why I wanted to join this summit. And then I think I can just pass it to somebody else. So my name's Arafili. I'm going to be facilitating this breakout room today. I'm a senior associate on RMI, formerly known as Rocky Mountain Institute's carbon-free electricity team. What brought me to this summit is we're standing up a program to help communities, utilities, local decision makers apply for the funds that have been made available through the Inflation Reduction Act, and understanding how to facilitate conversations between communities and their local decision makers is going to be a huge part of the successful implementation of some of those programs. So this has been a really exciting opportunity to hear about some case studies of where this has gone well and some areas to keep our eyes peeled for. I'll pass it to you, Brittany.
Hi, everyone. I am Brittany Reno. I'm the Executive Director of Sharpsburg Neighborhood Organization, a nonprofit that I founded almost 10 years ago. I'm also the mayor of Sharpsburg Borough. So I'll be talking a lot really fast and probably trying to fit too much in for the next 20 minutes. But I will pass it over to Natalia for her intro.
Thank you. I'm like munching on a banana and some chips. Sorry, it's lunchtime. I gotta get something. But yeah, I'm Natalia, Director of Special Projects with ReImagine Appalachia. I'm also a former elected official in City Council in Pittsburgh and had a very, very interesting district that I represented where some of the projects that I was working on worked really hard to align with the values of my district, which on the surface may not have supported some of these projects, but we made it happen. So that's pleased to have everyone here. Oh, I'll pass on to I see Fred is on camera.
Yeah. Thank you. Fred Redfern, the village of Crooksville in Southeast Ohio. We're a coal impacted community. I'm the former mayor and currently on village council, and dealing with and we'll probably discuss this, but I'm dealing with a reactive village council instead of a proactive one. I'd like to change that. Thank you.
Sure. Let's have Jeffrey go next and then Reich.
Jeff Allen, West Virginia Council of Churches. Usually I'm more involved in stopping projects than starting them. So I'm really excited to see that we might be able to organize and do some really good things.
Hi, my name is Rika Rothenstein. I am a research associate with ReImagine Appalachia. I live in Cincinnati in a pretty blue island neighborhood, so to speak, but in a purple to reddish state. So I'm interested to see how we can work together with people all along the political spectrum.
Thank you, Rika. Apologize for the name pronunciation there.
No problem.
I just put an order in the chat for the remaining folks to go. Let's go to Ruth next, followed by Ryan. Ruth, if you're sharing, you're on mute. All right, let's go to Ryan.
Hi, everybody. Ryan Whittemore. I'm Engagement and Program Coordinator at WRI, World Resources Institute. Grew up in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. So excited to be on here to learn more about how working with communities, how to work with communities more effectively. We do a lot of work that is community-based, so excited to learn.
Thanks, Ryan. Next up, we have Spike. Spike, are you there?
Yes, hi. My name is Spike Lewis, and I volunteer for public transit group and CR Club, interested in public and clean transportation, also clean energy. And after spending 30 years in California, coming out here and finding a different kind of attitude towards projects that I'm interested in, I thought this would be a really good session to be involved with. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go over to Tyler and then Nia.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm here because I'm a volunteer intern for Commissioner Shireen Hess in Indiana County, PA. I'm just attending to take notes for her because she couldn't attend.
Thanks, Tyler. We'll go to Nia, then Kaylee, then Matt.
Good day, everyone. My name is Nia Key, and I am attending today as a concerned citizen. I'm here in Southern West Virginia and interested in hearing what all the great minds. I am on the listserv, so I've been watching what's happening with ReImagine Appalachia. So I'm just here to listen to, see if there's any resolutions. I know I've been very concerned in this area that there's a lack of industry, so there's not a lot of job opportunities for people here and other opportunities as well. So I hope to hear some wonderful things today. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kaylee Delcato. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Land Force, a nonprofit organization in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Our mission is twofold. We provide work readiness training and workforce development in order to help the individuals in our teams get back to work. They also do this through completing land stewardship projects, doing trail restoration, improving vacant lots, and a whole host of other environmental programs and projects. I'm here because I'm new to my role. I'm really trying to reach out, meet new people, really get a better understanding of our region.
Thanks, Kaylee. And then Matt, if you're here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Matt Roberts. I work for SOPEC, that's the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council. I'm the Director of Marketing and Programs. I'm actually here filling in for a colleague, Aaron Stevens, who serves as our Southeast Ohio Community Liaison. So yeah, I am here to take some notes on our discussion and yeah, have a lot of experience in dealing with communities that are resistant to change. So excited to get the conversation going.
Excellent. Thanks all. I'll pass it over to you, Brittany, to provide a little bit of content before we hop into a discussion.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. We're doing it. Okay. So this is Sharpsburg. I'm expecting that most of you haven't been there, maybe probably haven't heard of it. It's a pretty small place. I'm going to tell you about the worst meeting I ever had. And but first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this town, which you see here. As you can see, it's very densely built. Urban community right on the riverfront. It is right across the river from the city of Pittsburgh. So it's interesting because we're working on a lot of the same things that the city is doing. We're just doing it at a much smaller scale and with with fewer resources. So I think that might be a familiar feeling for some of you all here. Within Allegheny County, which is this county that Pittsburgh sits in, you can see here, we are right there, right smack in the middle. We are about 3/4 of a square mile of land, but 1/3 of that is underneath the river. So I don't typically count it. And we have a pretty substantial proportion of our residents living under the federal poverty line. For a long time, this community has been a really affordable way for people without a ton of money to get into a really nice school district. And that is kind of starting to catch up to us in that it's getting more and more expensive to live here. And so affordable housing, I got to give it a shout out, even in the context of environmentalism, because it's so important right now. I look at maps a lot. I'm sure y'all look at maps of your own communities quite a lot. So to orient you from the map perspective, this is Sharpsburg. It is not big. And in some ways that's really tough, but in some ways it gives us a lot of power to affect change, to be a part of the local government. If any one of us so chooses here, we're 3,400 people. So really at some point, it seems like pretty much everyone's going to be on the local government at one time or another. We have a lot of flooding. We always have because we were built into a riverbank. So no huge surprise there, but most of our flooding is actually from our combined sewer system backing up during high wet weather events, which, as we know, are going to probably become more and more frequent as our climate is changing in southwestern Pennsylvania. So we're dealing with all these issues, and I'll talk more about our issues in a little bit here, but I want to tell you about my horrible meeting because it's super relevant to what we're talking about here today. Usually when I have a climate, a sustainability type of activity meeting, my tree huggers show up. The people in town who care about the trees, who care about air pollution, who are already inclined to support these kind of activities that we're talking about. This time, a row of very pissed off, far to the right people showed up to this meeting, residents, and they were pissed. And they were pissed because their houses kept flooding because we're at the bottom of a watershed, and they're in one of the most, one of the places hit hardest by our uphill water coming down from our neighboring community. So I was shaking for about the first 20 minutes of this meeting because they were so mad at me, for not having solved the flooding problem yet, for calling the event something that included the words climate change. And I sat there and I took it and I thanked them for participating, and I encouraged them to keep sharing their stories. And so we just essentially had a complaint fest for about 40 minutes. And through that, we kind of bonded over these things, because it turns out that regardless who people vote for, regardless of a lot of their views, nobody wants their basement to be flooded. And for us, that has been a pretty nice rallying cry for a lot of our environmental work here, is that it really does go beyond politics once you're sitting in the ground floor of the climate catastrophe. For us, we might argue about approaches, but getting to that common ground has made it a lot easier to push through different things. So we have a climate action plan now. That's what that meeting was a climate action planning meeting. And by the end of it, one of the guys was a trucker, and he was sharing about how idling laws have changed and how maybe we could implement some idling laws here to be stricter to clean up the air quality. And, is that the biggest air quality problem that we have locally? No, but the fact that we're even talking about ideas and trying things out is huge. And it really, for me, underscores that if we're actually addressing community needs, then you're going to get a lot less pushback, at least in my experience. So we built this community vision plan, and for us, this was not us bringing in an urban planning firm that told us what we should do. It was a very long, exhaustive process, engaging hundreds of residents, small business owners, workers, people who maybe used to live here and then couldn't afford to live here anymore. And so we had kept touch with them. So we got their opinions on the community and what we need to focus on. And it's just remarkable how many things we agree on. I have strong political opinions, but they don't line up with a lot of the people in my town. But we agree on enough that I can work on things, that we can work on things together. And then when I do want to do something a little more wild, they've worked with me for years on different projects, on things that are important to them, and they're less likely to shoot me down just out of gut instinct. So these are just some of the issues we're dealing with here. All sorts of stuff, and I'm sure you're all dealing with the same exact things. Really, it doesn't make sense to be solving a lot of these issues on the hyper-local level because it's just so wildly inefficient to do that. And here in Allegheny County especially, we've got 130 distinct municipalities all trying to do this stuff or some of them are trying to do it, some of them aren't, most of them don't have the capacity to do it all. So finding ways that we can collaborate across community lines is also really helpful, because you may not have another champion of stormwater management or runoff pollution in your town, but if you have one directly uphill, you two can get a lot done just by having an ally. And what we found is that if we're not prioritizing equity, and specifically, I mean, making sure that the people who have been most screwed over by the way that our systems have existed in our communities for years, if we're not prioritizing them and making them whole, then we're kind of missing the mark on doing this the right way. So that's something to keep in mind. And it also makes your work way more defensible when people are telling you, oh, this isn't a good idea. It's too scary to try this. We can't risk this. If you are fighting for the least, then people who are fighting against you are going to look pretty bad. And so it's going to be easier for you to get your stuff done. This might seem obvious. I'm not a person who loves to socialize a lot. That part might not seem obvious, but building these genuine relationships with people, meeting them at French Fry Fridays down at Chaz's house on 13th Street and asking them how their daughter is, asking them how their nephew is, asking them how their leg is healing up. Just giving a crap about people at a fundamental level is such a refreshing thing. I think that a lot of leaders maybe don't take the time to do as much as they could. I know I don't do it as much as I could, and but when I do it, it's a big deal. And you know, you're not going to get to the meat of what is causing a family's pain in your town the first time you meet them. But if you've met them 3 or 4 times and they trust you enough to be gentle with their feelings and with their vulnerabilities, then they're going to start telling you really important things that give you a lot of great insights on how you can help people in your town. So, and also understanding the local history and context. A lot of people who live in my town have lived here for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. I've lived here for 10 years. So there are a lot of longstanding beefs and rivalries and tensions, and oh, he screwed me over 30 years ago and I'll never trust him again. And that doesn't have to stop you from doing stuff, but it's a lot better if you know that stuff going into it, knowing that that stuff probably exists, and you want to proceed delicately as you're trying to kind of forge your way in that community. You always have to ask who's not in the room and why they're not in the room. Again, it's valuable information to have at the very least, but everybody's perspective is so valuable because each person is experiencing your town in a different way. And a lot of times the people who are elected to serve as public officials in a town are not dealing with the brunt of the negative things that are happening in town. Community engagement can and should happen in every place. It doesn't have to just be in a formal room. And in fact, you're probably going to get some really good gems if you're talking to people all the time, all over town, and asking questions specifically to get insights into what kind of projects you could be doing. You could be pushing forward environmentally without a ton of pushback locally. So you're talking sustainability at the fish fry. You're talking sustainability at the community meeting. You're talking about it with the parents who are hanging out with their kids as they're coloring. You're talking about it as you're offering free photos to the town, free family photos in the street fair. You're just building genuine relationships. You're doing your research, and then you're taking that data back to people and not just telling them this is what the data says, but saying, this is what the data says. Do you think there's a part of that that's missing? Do you think this is an accurate telling of the story and your lived experience around whatever the issue is, flooding, mobility issues, shade trees, healthcare needs? There's data out there, and if you can get your residents talking about the data and understanding what position the community is in, what your needs are, what your challenges are, and what your opportunities are, because it's 2 sides of the same coin, people start to get excited. And they're not going to get excited about everything that you want them to, but they'll get excited about something. And if you can stoke that fire of excitement and passion and civic giving a crap, that can blossom into some big things. we don't have to get it. You all know how to convene local leaders. You all are local leaders. Coming together around a shared task that is something other than yelling at each other and arguing is so powerful. You can all have really strong disagreements about where the community should go or what activities you should do, but sitting around a table, eating food, and just kind of talking, commiserating, dreaming a little bit together, and trying to be mutually respectful while doing that. If you all can do that, you will find common points that you can work towards. And a lot of them are going to overlap with the funding opportunities that are shaking down out of the federal government right now, which is huge. And then when you multiply that over multiple communities, big things start to happen that make national news. This little asset map, even just creating an asset map, it makes people feel good because you're starting to look at your community from a place of what you have, appreciating what you have, and wanting to support and nurture those things, rather than just worrying about what you don't have and feeling bad about it. So this is our community vision plan launch. Again, I'm looking at people here who agree with me or disagree with me politically on everything. But they show up and they say, well, I like this part. And by golly, if there's one thing in there that they like, then I'm going to work on it and go from there. So I did want to take a little bit of time to encourage you to think about your community and where it fits into the stories that are being told. Because stories are being told about your community, maybe not in a national magazine right now, but certainly between residents, they're talking about what's happening in the town. So what is that story? I know Sharpsburg locally is the poor community in a rich school district outside of the city of Pittsburgh. So it's not a city neighborhood, but it's urban. So it's not really fully suburban. It's in a weird place. Regionally, we're a river valley town. We're dealing with river valley problems sitting at the bottom of 4 different watersheds. It's wild. And we're just half a square mile of land trying to kind of funnel all that water safely into the river. But nationally, we're doing a lot of work that other communities aren't doing, even communities much bigger than us. We are scrappy. We are part of kind of an Appalachian tradition here. We are part of a Rust Belt resurgence. I've had residents say, you're not really Appalachian though. And it's like, if all my town's problems are Appalachian and we are in Appalachia, then I'm going to call my town an Appalachian town because we are dealing with so many of the same things, especially when we look at climate and sustainability issues. So we started thinking more as a community about urban systems and how all of these issues are so intimately related to one another, especially on the environmental and sustainability front. I know I don't have a ton of time, but so we're going to show you some nice pictures of projects we've done. One, I'm constantly listening. I'm on the longest listening tour of anyone's life. I think I'm always getting coffee with people, getting lunch with people, stopping on the sidewalk to chat with people just to ask them what's pissing them off, to ask them what's exciting them, and to see how that fits into what the community leadership is currently focusing on and how we can, adjust our sails as needed. We did a feasibility study. Thanks to the Department of Environmental Protection, they granted us the time of these experts to look at our municipal buildings and basically scope out, model out how much energy we could generate on our buildings if we solarized them. And I had always been rah Brittany out there tree hugging and encouraging us to solarize all the buildings. And what this process really backed up what I was fighting for with data, which was super exciting. And we found out that solar is not feasible on one of our buildings. And so I can drop that and then people can see me dropping that and I explain why I'm dropping it. And then they're that much more confident about the things that I am sticking with. I think being willing to admit, maybe not that I was wrong, but that, there was a better way to do it. I think that has earned me respect in this town, even from people who don't want to ever hear the word environmental ever again. So we found out that we can, if we solarize 2 of our buildings, we can cover the municipality's entire electrical load, which is wild and huge because we're an environmental justice community, lots of low-income residents. The borough itself doesn't have extra money left over at the end of the year to pave roads. So if we could start bringing down our expenses, that is hard to argue with, regardless of what political party you belong to. So we've done joint solar purchasing programs to help bring down the costs just a bit for businesses and residents in solar. We've done an energy baseline study in our neighboring communities. Millvale and Etna also joined us in this to figure out, what is the low-hanging fruit where we could make the biggest impact environmentally through home improvement projects, essentially, weatherization and stuff like that. Where can we have the biggest impact for the environment, and also where can we best help our residents' bottom lines? Again, very hard to argue with saving residents money. I wouldn't want to try it. So we do all these fairs. I'm wrapping up here, but the big thing is figuring out what people care about and then figuring out a way to tie those things into what you want to do. Because I don't have a lot of capacity. I'm sure y'all don't have a ton of capacity in your communities. So when you put forth the effort, time, money to do something, make it count. You can get a few things notched off, and you're building community. When I meet a super resident who is super passionate and driven, I help them get their thing off the ground. Chaz is starting the Sharpsburg Flea Market. Lifelong resident. He's on our board. Has been on our board for 5 years. He's an antiquer by trade, and this seems like it has not much to do with environmental work, but building up these kind of connections and investing in people is so important, and it's so impactful in the long run. It makes everything else you're trying to do so much easier. So I don't want to keep going through these projects necessarily because I think we're out of time for this, but we got a lot of projects and I'm really happy to talk about them with all of you. Actually, I will highlight this because this is a building that was falling down, filled with asbestos, rats, and pigeons. If you've seen me talk before, you've seen me talk about this, but this has been a true multi-generational effort from people who've lived here for 6 months, working with people who've lived here for 75 years. And it keeps growing and growing. We have now solarized the shed because Ruth Ann, our garden queen, had the idea to solarize the shed so we could put a cooler there. Now the produce that they pick all summer can stay fresher longer, and then if it doesn't get picked up by residents here who want free food, we're a food desert community, so reinforcing these systems has been huge. We then transport it 10 blocks down, and it lives in our free fridge on the other side of town until people pick it up, which they always do. We've never had to throw food away. So really just being a good person, even in the face of people who are a little chaotic and rude, it pays off eventually. Encouraging the strengths and passions of others, even if they're not your passions, encouraging passion at all, I think gets you in a pretty good frame of mind and gets you on a good track. Understanding the needs and challenges that you've got, addressing multiple things at once to get more people involved and just to make stronger, more interesting projects, focusing on equity, and of course, being grateful because nobody has to do this work. And it's exhausting, especially if you're not getting paid to do it. You're just a volunteer. So anything that people will give me, even if it's just a word about their opinion, that's huge, and I'm grateful for it. So that's that. I hope I didn't take up too much time.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Let's take some questions or comments on the content that Brittany shared so far.
So did you have divisions in the community, and how did you overcome them?
Yes. So I think one of the bigger divisions that we have had to face as a community over the last 10 years since I've been here is that for a long time it was super insular. A lot of people were moving out or passing away, and people were not moving into the community for a long time. And so the community was getting older and older. The vacancy rates were getting higher and higher. When I first got to town, the biggest thing people were concerned about was the vacancy rates of housing. And it was pretty substantial. It was at least 10% of our housing was vacant. And so fast forward 10 years, the market has changed. We're popping on the real estate front here, for better and worse. And now we're struck with how do we bridge the divide between new Sharpsburg and old Sharpsburg? And what has been so effective is leaning into the strength of the existing social fabric, because all these people who've lived here for 50, 60 years, they know each other. They grew up with each other. They know their kids. They know their parents. They know all about each other. They go way back. And so instead of trying to build a new culture, what I've tried to do is encourage these new folks who are moving into town to become a part of that existing culture, that existing social fabric. So it's not like, oh, we have that event, but that's more for old Sharpsburg. This is the fresh new Sharpsburg event. We're embracing the traditions. We're trying to amplify and elevate the great parts of our history, even down to the businesses. Like, we have landlords who hold their spaces and sit on them vacant for an extra few months just to get the right business owner who supports really all the stuff that we're trying to do, but just also values the Sharpsburg culture and wants to build on it and invest in it, not changing it, not replacing it, just enhancing it.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Will this PowerPoint be available to everyone?
I'm happy to share it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We will we will share with you a treasure trove of information for all registrants post conference. Absolutely. And well, go ahead, Fred. I see you had your mute off.
Yes, I was going to ask about how you handled and what is the best way to handle the flooding issue. We have the same portion of our lower end of our Main Street. It's accessible. It's in the floodplain, and we've flooded several times, and some homes also. And trying to address that is difficult for me. How did you handle it?
Yeah, well, jury's still out entirely. I mean, honestly, I forgot to mention, I went to grad school while I was running for mayor to pursue a master's in sustainability, because I really wanted to have more of a technical base for the stuff the stuff I believed in my heart, but I wanted to actually know I was, not spouting nonsense. So really, it's looking at the problem all over the place, doing a complete hydrological assessment. We've been really lucky to get to work with quite a few different university classes, which, they're not, it's not as easy, as quick, or as foolproof as working with a, certified professional kind of situation. But we've gotten a lot of work done with engineering students who studied the hydrological flow of the water, where it was, getting caught, where we were finding the channels, if they were channelized, were too small. And we reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers. We reached out to our congressmen. Like, we just reached out to anybody who would hear us talk about it. And it's really interesting, because so many communities don't deal with flooding. But when you deal with it, it is such a hamstringer, even down to like trying to build new parks, new paths, trying to get funding to do housing. You can't build it in the floodplain. So the long and short of it is, I think most of our floodplain infrastructure would best be put in the communities directly uphill of ours, so that the water isn't even getting to Sharpsburg in the first place. We are looking at, and this is not unique to Sharpsburg, but so often these environmental justice communities that are bearing the brunt of the issues are directly, supporting the livelihoods of the people directly uphill, who typically have more room to build, green infrastructure projects, more, even just to plant trees, you know? And at least in Pittsburgh, a lot of those communities have a lot more money, as well as more land. And so, you know, to try and do green infrastructure project strategy in you know, this county or any place based on who has the best grant writer versus, you know, based on hydrological assessments, where is that infrastructure going to be most impactful? That's what I'm wrestling with now, because I can't help but think that we need to be coordinating a little better on the regional level on this one and on most issues.
Natalia, did you want to make a comment?
I'll just add to Brittany what Mayor Reno was saying. My district was also dealing with some severe flooding, and we really had to take a regional approach. You know, the water didn't stop at the border. I represented the city, but the water didn't stop at the border of the city, and it was actually along I want to say a creek, Sawmill Run, very far. And so there was it was funded by, well, actually it was funded by some businesses with some money thrown in from a local foundation and some city money as well, to do a multi-municipal hydrologics, I can't pronounce that word, study and hydrological study, and from that actually came out a nonprofit organization, a Sawmill Run watershed organization, and they got some money from a local foundation to do a better study and work with the Army Corps of Engineers and other partners, that because it's bigger than us, it's bigger than a town. And I know it's so hard to get people to think bigger, but that's really what it comes down to. And so there has been some work on the creek. It also has to do with our sewage overflow and our sanitary.
There's so much good work to be done. There's no shortage of excellent, great work to be done. That's why it's so exciting.
We have funding, right? We're going to get funding coming down the pike. And so this is a perfect time for regions to be aligned.
Well, in our community, our flooding only occurs every 10 to 15 years. However, the EPA's now made us where we have to raise our sewage treatment pumps out of the floodplain, and that's for us, our cost is 2.8 million.
Wow.
We're only a community of 2,400 people. And then the other issue is downstream where our water flows from our creek. There's the next community down is 3 miles away, and their population is 1,200, and they have a flood control was put in it must be 50 years ago, and here we are. They don't flood any longer, but we do. So I like to have the same opportunity as they had, but everything's different in the political spectrum and the programs. And to try to get the Corps of Engineers, everybody shifts the blame to Department of Natural Resources. I got U.S. Game and Wildlife. I mean, I've got a list here on my desk of people I'm trying to call to try to still resolve the problem even today. And this has been going on for several years. But anyway, my main goal of this breakout group was how I changed from a reactive council to a proactive council. You give me a few ideas. I've made some notes of those, but still, that's why I wanted the copy of your
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that. And Natalia, I appreciate all you do too for ReImagine and the group of ReImagine people. I appreciate it so much. So I'm gaining a little bit of knowledge as we go, and I thank you all for that.
Fred, if you ever want to hop on a phone call for half an hour and give me the nitty gritty and we can strategize, I'm down to help you. I love this stuff. Because it just makes good sense. And that, like, so much of the stuff I fight for, it's like you can't necessarily quantify it with facts, but we've got so much evidence now that these kind of investments are so good in both the short term, but especially the long term for our communities. So, and then of course, the other, a great way to change your council in any way is if your council sucks, organize and get them out of office and put better people in office, which is easier said than done, of course, but that's made my life a lot easier, doing organizing locally to get people who actually care or at least aren't hostile to some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm
That
working
makes
on
it a
that.
lot easier. Yeah. Heck yeah. Anyone else have a burning community problem? Or 50?
I have a quick question, because I'm in Charleston now, which is a pretty substantial town, has all sorts of resources to apply for federal grants. But I've pastored in small communities like Keystone, North Fork, and McDowell County. Used to have 600 people down to about 300 people. Lots and lots of needs. How do you intersect with state and federal government to get resources into the community that they could probably, there's probably resources out there, but both accessing it and then keeping an account of it so that no one winds up in jail, which has happened, and not really intentionally. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, that's the whole thing, right? The capacity problem. Even finding, applying for, and then, God forbid, getting the opportunity to manage one of these grants is so far outside of the realm of even, feasibility for most of the communities that I know, and so again, taking that step back and looking at the regional approach, looking at the system, if I was going to apply for a big comprehensive stormwater green infrastructure plan right now, I wouldn't do it just for our community. I'd do it for the entire watershed. And right now, Pennsylvania doesn't give enabling legal authority to watershed groups to place and manage green infrastructure, but that is something that we could feasibly do. Which would then open up so many more doors for being so much smarter about where we're putting this stuff. To answer your question specifically, because we had that community vision plan that was really inclusive in nature, it's given me so much wind in my sails to go out and say, I can say with pretty good confidence that this is stuff that my community wants, or at least isn't going to be mad about if we try and do it, because we know that it's probably a good idea. After we did the plan, we launched the Sharpsburg Eco District Collaborative, which is a multi nonprofit group within Sharpsburg. It's mostly human service groups, honestly, but my organization is the backbone organization that convenes us every quarter to talk about what issues any one of us is having, and not just us specifically as organizations, of course, but the people we are representing, the people we're interfacing with on the ground every day, which often are the people with the most need, which gives us so much great insight into what they're worried about and what's stressing them out. When we all get on the same page about that stuff, which we try to do at least quarterly, but typically we're all, emailing or texting at least once a week, then it's not like one person is having this problem in town. It's like all of the biggest organizations in town are putting up the bat signal to the county, the state, our federal legislators. We have this big problem. We need to solve it. This is what we're thinking. Can you help us? Or can you tell us somewhere else we can go? And if they help us, which they usually do, great. If they don't, then all of a sudden our town is out there talking about how these people aren't helping us, and we need to get a better representative in that office. So you can't really lose. Some of the things take longer, but progress is happening, and it's mostly relationship based.
Makes sense. Thank you.
And I would add that one Sharpsburg Eco District Partner Organization is a large outreach ministry. And so just a couple days ago, we had, was it yesterday? We just had Tuesday, we had a press conference. Millvale, Etna, and Sharpsburg, 3 river towns, very similar. We work together a lot, but we also had faith leaders from our communities come out and say, here's how we're seeing the climate crisis directly impact the people in our town that are already struggling the most. And this is why we think it's important, and we think we have a moral responsibility to address these problems. I mean, gosh, fiscal conservatism, moral righteousness, like this is a good thing to fight for. And I don't get a lot of pushback from it.
Good deal.
When I put it in those terms. Important caveat.
So I've heard a couple of different ways that folks have gone about handling like conflicts or resistance to change. I've heard listening and regional cooperation as 2 of the like primary examples for building trust and being able to move forward from there. Are there any other strategies or methods that folks have used in encouraging like forward movement or momentum in their communities that we haven't touched on yet?
I would encourage everyone to lean on regional partner organizations that are focused on whatever you're trying to do, because I'm not a policy wonk. I hate reading policy. I hate introducing policy, but it's so much easier when you have a regional partner who is laser focused on that exact issue, is studying best practices, is studying how this kind of stuff is being implemented in communities exactly like yours. So I'm not taking a City of Pittsburgh complete streets ordinance, which is an awesome ordinance they've got, but I'm making a complete streets resolution and we're getting as far as we can. And we're using, Elizabeth PA's model ordinance and adapting that and then adopting it for our own use. And then a few years down the line, maybe we've got the political will to put some teeth into that legislation and make it a real ordinance. But I'm a perfectionist. I've decided that nothing I do here is perfect and can be perfect, but I'm trying to lay down foundations that other people in different political climates down the line can build on. And it's not, oh, we're starting from nothing. It's, oh, we're starting from that crappy complete streets resolution, but it's better than nothing. That's where I'm at. And it's been a lot more effective than trying to do everything perfectly.
So just on the complete streets policy, I've been trying to pass one here in our village here recently. It's still on the agenda, but it's not going anywhere. So from what I gather, you're saying we can redo that policy to meet what I think I can get passed, change it to read that and not go with our original policy.
I think that's always an option, especially in situations like you seem to have with your council. Getting past the most that you can is still better than getting through nothing, as long as it's still a quality ordinance. And then it gives people time to get comfortable with the idea that it's not like I'm not taking out every single parking space to put in a bike lane, that kind of stuff. Like people start to see, oh, we're just going to have smaller curb cuts when a new parking lot gets poured, so that grandmas don't have to cross 90 feet. They just have to cross 20 feet, and that's been a big thing for me. Is we have a ton of kids and we have a ton of seniors. We have a ton of people with disabilities. Those are 3 groups of people that nobody is going to say, I want those people to get hit by a car when they're walking down the street. And so when I'm calling out the fact that we have people in wheelchairs riding in the streets because we don't enforce our sidewalk things, when I'm talking about, oh, I almost saw Mrs. Smith get hit by a car because the stop sign, the crosswalk in front of the stop sign isn't painted well. It's just, it becomes very hard to actually defend those kind of positions when you're forced
this
to.
Program that I'm speaking of began as a county-wide initiative. Several of the villages in our county have approved it. I received the complete streets policy as what the other villages within the county have passed thus far, and ours is just strictly against it. So I'll reach out to that individual that presented that to me, and and get their opinion on it, along with the county commissioners. They're behind it also. So
That's
well,
interesting.
I may be able to gain some momentum that way. Thank you very much.
Of course, Fred, I'd also recommend meeting with these folks and genuinely asking them, regardless of what your history is, but what is it that they do care about? What do they want to see happen? It's easy for them to say, no, I don't like this, but make them put a name to what they do want. And then there might be some wiggle room where you can figure out some ways to work together.
Well,
if you don't find all their ideas totally odious.
I try to address these issues to them at council and meetings in our council workshops where everything's recorded. So I press them for answers, and a lot of times they're just short with me. So short.
We love politicians having to go on the record about their positions.
Oh, 1 minute left. Darn it, because I had well, that's fine. This is great. No, this has been really, really awesome. And Brittany, you've been such a great friend to ReImagine Appalachia, and you've been so awesome in sharing your knowledge.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we might have to ask you to come back.
Please, y'all are my favorite, because you're like people who are actually doing the work, but you also get the dream, you get the goals. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I would love to have you to maybe we can have a bigger public facing thing around the local regional visioning plus flooding plus everything. So
you tell me where to go and I'll be there anytime.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I also heard from Annie, our friend, our tech person, Annie, our digital content creator, that you also helped her out too at Penn Future. So awesome.
I'm fighting for a cause bigger than myself.
Okay. I'll pass it over to you, Arafeli.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining this conversation. I hope it was helpful. We'll go back into the main room now to hear report out from each of the breakout rooms, and then we'll close the summit as a whole. So
like an Olympic torch, we'll put out the torch. Yeah, we're all gonna sing and sorry, we don't have fireworks or anything.
Welcome everybody. I see everybody's coming back in. I think we're pretty close. I'm looking at my.
I see our favorite mayor.
We have a lot of favorite mayors.
I was gonna say it's actually.
I know, but like Brittany.
I was getting some text messages about how wonderful your presentation was, Brittany. So I think we'll have to have folks.
Hey, thank you all. This is a huge honor for me. Thank you.
I think the gang's all here. So for the next, we have a few more minutes together today. I want to take maybe about 2 minutes each to hear quick reflections from the breakout groups, thinking about what were some exciting things that were shared or pieces that you are excited to see built upon or to see growing. I'll go ahead and go through the order of the options. And if any of our facilitators do have to jump, I know how busy everyone is. So no worries, we'll figure it out. But I don't know if Joanne or Megan could share a few highlights from option 1.
Sure. I'll get started, and Joanne and anybody else, please feel free to chime in. So in our group, we were talking about authentic relationship building and really using that to center ongoing visioning and engagement activities to help build that diverse coalition. And so we shared a number of tools just to help groups think proactively about how they can build up that diverse coalition and grow those authentic relationships, as well as the amazing visioning example that ReImagine Beaver has started and continues to, be part of this ongoing process of using visioning to engage and build relationships, which leads to a stronger vision and more relationships. So that was a lot of the things that we talked about in group 1.
Yeah, I'll just add, since it was about relationship building, we spent some opening time on direct sharing. And I really appreciate the people that joined and shared their stories with us and were willing to participate. Everybody spoke. Everybody either had a contribution or question. So I really appreciate, creating that kind of relationship building.
Thank you. Wonderful. So option 2, I'm not sure I see you or Dan. I know both of you were in that workshop, and that's okay if y'all had to jump. I'll give it a second for someone to hop off mute, but that group was focused on conflict resolution and difficult conversations. So I'm going to move to the next spot, and if someone wants to sort of raise your hand to speak onto that, feel free to. So option number 3, Emily, I'm so glad you were able to join us. Do you want to share a little bit about the research and education to empower communities?
Yes, I mean, we just talked about the basics of researching with very little information and just trying to use what you have to gather additional information, and just, it can seem like a rabbit hole at times, but that is kind of the process in early development projects. And then relying on your government resources that are involved in development, whether that be your local planning commission or the regional economic development group in your state, or your state economic development group, or a national economic development group like the Appalachia Regional Commission. And those sources are very helpful to try to get information on early developments, because you're not going to have permits started yet, anything like that. So you really have to use as many resources as you can, whether that be word of mouth, government records, community, insights. So just getting creative and following through, and then continuing to follow through as the process develops, because since we're early on, it could easily take years, and remembering to go back and continue to follow up and stay knowledgeable and involved in the process.
Thank you, Emily. And Judy, on option 4, to talk a little bit about how that discussion went.
Sure. Yeah, we talked a bit about the relationship between an attorney representing a coalition and a community benefits negotiation process. We talked about how it's important for community groups in the coalition to have clear roles and commitments to each other written in writing before they start negotiating with a developer, to make sure that no one's having like side negotiations with a developer, and that they're all, coming together on a united front. So we talked about that. We talked a little bit about, how the attorney, can't make any decisions for the coalition. The attorney will have to, make sure that they're presenting all of the options from the developer to the community groups, to the coalition, and the coalition has to sign off on any final decisions. Yeah, and then what else? If anyone else from the group wants to chime in, those were some of my highlights though from the conversation.
No, I think that was well said. I would just add like the importance of that community benefit coalition to stay together over the long haul, to monitor and make sure like the things that were promised are happening, and be at the ready to do something together if that in fact is not the case.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So many incredible conversations that I can just see turning into incredible work. And so option 5 was opening up communities that are resistant to new ideas. I heard that was incredible. Arafeli, do you want to reflect a little?
Yeah, definitely. So we heard first in our breakout room from Mayor Reno from Sharpsburg, Pennsylvania, about the projects that they're working on to vision and implement their vision for Sharpsburg's future. And we spoke about that within the context of like difficult community conversations and what it means to be a town that's located outside of the big metropolitan area of Pittsburgh, and dealing with some of the same issues and dealing with regional issues as well. And how you move forward with kind of like a mixed political ideology. And in particular, we talked about a couple of examples of ways to move forward from like resistance within communities. We talked about the importance, of course, of listening, and in particular, Brittany spoke about reframing listening around like what are the issues into what folks do want, into like that more visioning perspective, paying attention to what resources the community does have. So reframing the conversations from lack and scarcity to more focusing on the assets of the community and how we can support and engage those assets for our community's futures. And we also spoke about the importance of regional cooperation and visioning too, because our political boundaries aren't necessarily the way that our environment works. We talked a lot about the importance of dealing with issues of flooding within watershed regions and the importance of kind of cooperating regionally on issues like that. Lastly, like finding partners regionally who are working on some of the same issues, who may have done more research on like case studies or best practices for dealing with those issues, and then bringing those with the appropriate community context into the solutions that you're working on within your communities too. I don't know, Brittany, if there was anything you wanted to share that I missed.
The only
there.
thing I'd add that was great, thank you, is actively caring about people, like at the individual level and at the individual family level, because then when you try and do whatever your wacky green project is, it's not that crazy lefty who's trying to do this. It's Brittany up the street who checks on me when my house floods, and then it's like, well, I don't really think that's real, but I'm not going to fight it because, she cares about it. We'll see how it goes, which, that's not the biggest ringing endorsement, but I can work with that and you all can too. So just care about people and make sure they know you care about them or feel like you care about them, and you can get a lot done.
That exact thing is actually something we've heard a lot, and we have our Building Bridges series sometimes where folks talk about, and one of the things we say a lot is like, I think this is dumb, but I like you, so we'll give you a little bit of time. So it's not that is a thread of conversation we have heard through across many from many wise leaders. So I like it. That's wonderful. So thank you so much. Go ahead, Amanda.
I was just gonna say, I think now everybody else knows why we love Brittany.
And Tom, I see you're working on resources in the chat, and thank you for sharing all that work that you're doing. We'll look forward to getting up with you to track some of those after the event. I wanted to talk, so the next couple minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our resources at ReImagine and some of the things we're doing next. And then I'm going to have a few questions from the audience, because we don't want this conversation to end with this event. We want to hear a little bit from you, questions like what's next? What does your community need? Are there aspects you're most excited about? Are there resources or events or conversations that you'd like to see from ReImagine going forward? We're looking at how we, as ReImagine, can hold this work. And we're also looking at, if there's resources that are needed, what are outside groups or resources we could try and find and funnel into the region. So I'm going to ask those questions in just a minute. So I wanted you to be prepared. But really quick, and so Tom is sharing some great resources in the chat. We have also, in the process of planning this event, when we started the event, we thought we would make a toolkit. And then we learned about a dozen amazing toolkits. So one of which we liked so much, we had Iona present on it from her work in Cincinnati, because it's so rooted in a community. And I think that's helpful to see. But if you look on this page, or if you just want to bookmark it for later, you scroll down, there's lots of information, and we'll put our summit summary here too. But ReImagine, we have created one paper that is called Maximizing Value, Ensuring Community Benefits. Amanda wrote it. It has a lot of amazing definitions, resources, best case, gold standard things. So it's a great repository for a lot of this information. And then we have a series of community benefits, step-by-steps, and toolkits that our partners had put out that all have slightly different spins. So I wanted to make sure you all had that if your wheels are spinning and you're wondering what's next. If you have resources you would like to see added, please be in touch, because we know we don't have them all. So this can be a growing tool for us to have access to. I think the other piece that I would point you all to is a survey that I just dropped in the chat. One of the things we will be doing going forward is developing a bit of a cohort for folks who are looking for mutual support to have these kinds of conversations. And so I'll drop that form once again in the chat if you're interested in being a part of those ongoing conversations as we shape what's next together. Excuse me. And then of course we do have a lot of upcoming events, which I am not going to punish you with right now, but I do encourage you to look at our events page. And as I noted earlier, sometimes it takes a week or two, so the most recent events don't have them, but we do put recordings and notes and PowerPoints from our previous event on our website. So if you go to that events page and you click the previous events and you want to, there's a lot of informative stuff in there. We've had some incredible panels on a lot of issues that were covered today recently. So I highly recommend that repository of wisdom. So that is a little bit about what we already have planned, to do what's next. And now I want to hear from you all. If you all have ideas about what was most useful about this event, what could come next from this event, what are resources that are needed in the region. So yeah, feel free to come off mute, drop a note in the chat, raise your hand to get the conversation started. What's next?
I've got a thought. Okay.
Great.
And I will stop monopolizing this organization. So I would love to see a map of which communities in all of our states have been engaged by ReImagine Appalachia and our close partners, so we can start to look geographically. Do we have any clusters of places where we could really foster some multi-municipal action or something like that? Because we know that, oh, look at this, all these communities in one watershed. There's a lot of power there in the geographic. So if we could figure out where everybody is in relation to each other, we might be able to find some cool places to focus.
That is a type of map we haven't heard. I'm just going to talk about maps.
Oh, I love that.
We love a map. I just want to talk really quickly about a couple of maps that were shared during this event, which are not that map. And one is maps of power plants that are slated to close or have closed in the last 30 years. Those are communities that have a lot in common. And there's also some maps shared of communities that have some kind of overlapping marginalized former coal community that are set aside for special funding from federal investments, and we can reshare those. There, Dan's got it. Look at that. So those energy community maps, and the one from Natalia. So I
was just gonna add, it's my dream to get a bunch of our communities working together. So maybe do joint applications for federal funding or, joint purchasing. And I have yet to figure out how we go about it, but what you just suggest strikes me as maybe a first step.
Other questions or things folks would like to see next, topics that they'd like to see maybe as a standalone event, things like that. Or are we all done? Make my job easy.
Can I just point to one resource where I put an erroneous link? My apologies. So something that we talk a lot about is, frankly, the lack of capacity, right? That a lot of our local governments and counties and economic development agencies have. I'm going to put a link in the chat. I'm in the process of updating it right now. I mean, not I've been paying attention today, but generally this week. Bookmark it and check back. There are so many organizations out there that are existing to help build capacity for communities that may not have it. And so if there's one or two or three people in your town or community council or whatever, or local government structure that can make it, there's local government boot camps where people can learn about zoning and they can learn about flooding. There's actually a program that just came up where you can have a free fellow for your economic development organization. That just came up from the U.S. Economic Development Agency. So this this page has a lot of different resources that you can leverage and learn more about. So you have a deeper understanding of how to do those grants and how to get free capacity.
That's the idea of trying to find those larger groups that may be outside the region that have some resources and try to funnel those in. So
yeah, and actually speaking of the fellow though, I in fact was thinking that might be a good thing to try to pull down those funds for the Reimagine Your Community and the Community Benefit Coalition, or do some of this. It's a Reimagine fellow. Everyone here knows I'm not afraid to call people, so let's hear your thoughts, or I will call on you.
I'm sorry, what is the question? Or are we just sharing our thoughts on?
Yeah, anything that
on
like,
what's next.
Yeah, what's next, or what do you got you excited over the last couple of days?
One thing I would like to see, and disclaimer, I do work for a state government agency. I'm at the Department of Environmental Protection in the Office of Environmental Justice. So I would love to share some of the work that we're doing. We have an enhanced public participation policy, and we're also going to be announcing or officially posting our updated environmental justice policy through the Office of the Governor and DEP. So I'd like to see, like I said, I'd like to share some of our work that we're doing, introduce you to some of our staff. We're all relatively new, especially with the new transition with Governor Shapiro now at the helm of state government here in Pennsylvania. But then we're also coordinating efforts with the EPA or the federal government as well, and love to have a conversation with some of the EPA folks, some of our folks, some of your folks, and to see how we can build that trust and work much more collaboratively.
It's wonderful. Yeah. And if you all have any links or anything, feel free to drop those in the chat. We can get those in the notes. And one thing we have is twice monthly campaign or coalition update meetings with lots of opportunities for speakers to join us. And so that might be a great opportunity for you to speak to our coalition, Ricardo, and other folks who might have some exciting information or projects to share. Great. Go ahead, Fred. Fred's got his hand up.
Yeah, Fred.
Yes, one of the issues well, I'm dealing with, and I'm sure other smaller communities are too, is a lot of our local elected officials have jobs during the day. So attending, of course, I'm retired and I have the opportunity to join in a lot of these webinars, and I appreciate that so much. The question is, how do we address those problems, or how do we get the information to those elected officials who work during the day and do not have the opportunity to listen to these webinars in the evening?
Yeah. Thank you, Fred. And I would encourage any of our elected officials who have that struggle to shout out. I know Natalia was a former councilwoman, so I don't know if you want to reflect on some of that. Brittany.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this internally, but I definitely have seen, some organizations having some evening meetings, maybe at 6 p.m. or something like that. If there's an appetite for it, we can put something out there and see if there's an appetite for it, and see who can be, who might be attracted to something like that. I don't know if that would help to reach certain audiences that we can't reach otherwise. But I will say though, our local elected officials, it's like, if you want something done, ask a busy person, because they also run the Little League and the Girl Scouts and, like Meals on Wheels. It's community volunteers to the max. So we got to figure that out. And I agree.
Well, and I'll add, it is also why we live stream and put these things on Facebook. So a lot of, almost everything ReImagine does is somewhere online.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's super. Sorry, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go for it.
You can just, sometimes I'll link people to these things. Like the ReImagine Appalachia has been great, Fred, because they put so many of their recordings online, and then it's like, oh yeah, just I listened to this the other day. It's a lot of good stuff for us. Why don't you put it on while you're folding the laundry? Why don't you put it on while you're doing literally anything, taking a shower? You know, people are taking showers. People are probably listening to music while they're doing it. Or they're listening to nothing, and they could be listening to these great podcasts, which are not podcasts, but you know, when you frame it as this is an interesting thing, put it on, just listen to it in the background of whatever you're doing. I mean, is that the way we want people to interact with it? Ideally not, but you know, again, if that's the way we can get them to listen to it, then let's go for it.
That warms my heart in a way that I cannot describe in words, Brittany. The idea of someone folding laundry to one of our webinars makes me very, very, very heartened. So, wonderful. Other questions, thoughts about what's next?
How about the J team? Jeff, Jim,
Joanne, Jenny.
You know, I think and speak in metaphors, and you know, just the whole capacity issue reminds me of the saying that when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Right now. And I think, you know, the capacity issues are one that, you know, I haven't thought a lot about, you know, but, you know, how do we sort of build, you know, capacity across, you know, West Virginia and Appalachia, so there can be sort of an inflow of funds to the region. And I think, you know, what Brittany brought up, the whole idea of sort of working regionally, I think makes a lot of sense to me. And so I think, you know, where do we want Appalachia to be in 50 years? And I think we have to, I think the map, I love the idea of the map, because I think knowing where we have centers of potential strength, where we have areas of absence, you know, and just, you know, connecting people. That's been the other reason why it's been so hard to, I think, organize in Appalachia. It takes forever to get from one community to another. You know, even you know, traveling from Keystone to Bluefield, if you get behind a coal truck, it can take a long time to get up there. So yeah, so I just, you know, as I think about this process, you know, it's one that we've got to organize for the future, so that, you know, when opportunities like this, like IRA and Build Back Better come along, that we're prepared, that everyone's sort of equally prepared. That issue of equity that Brittany was talking about, everyone's prepared and has the same resources to reach out for these, and it's not just, you know, those communities that already have a grant writer or something like that, but everyone sort of gets helped in this. And I think that's the real vision and promise of ReImagine Appalachia. So thank you.
I'll just add to Jeff's metaphor in that, you know, I think we all agree that there's just so much going on and so many projects and possibilities that are coming with this huge influx, and it can be overwhelming at times, this entire process. And so there's a great metaphor that I like to think about, which is, you know, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. And that's just what we have to do, is, you know, work forward there. So thank you for everything.
I think those are some great words. I'm gonna close this out on. I want to.
No, wait. I think Joanne. J number 3.
All right,
number
let's go,
3.
Joanne.
And I don't have any great metaphors, but I just wanted to say, I think a big piece of this is how do we create an atmosphere for change to happen. And I think it was Zach in the introduction who talked about speaking in one voice. I think the harder thing is, how do we bring coalitions together that don't necessarily agree in one voice? And how do we hear the multitudes of voices, but find a way to go forward together, even with our disagreements? That's the harder piece. That's the vulnerability piece that Jay talked about, Jay Williams, admitting our mistakes, just kind of being real, sloppy, messy people. That's who we are. So that's just me, real sloppy, messy.
I love it. We talk about the butterfly and the chrysalis, which I think is a metaphor that came from Jeff. So, but it's messy in there, you know, but that's how you get a butterfly. So you got to go through the messy stages. And then my other favorite saying is, if everyone in your coalition agrees, then it's not a very good coalition. It's not big enough. If you have to have conflict, and conflict sharpens the knife, right? So I think if you have a whole room of folks and everyone's disagreeing with each other, then oftentimes your event is not as good or your project isn't as good because you haven't had those good debates that really help you refine your work. So these metaphors are beautiful. We love metaphors at ReImagine. I can't believe we haven't gotten pie in there. But on that note of you need to crack some eggs to make an omelet, I am very aware that many of you have skipped lunch to attend this event. So I am now going to let you go. Thank you all so much for your time. As I always say, time is the greatest asset you have, and you shared it with us, which is very meaningful to me. And we will be in touch. So thank you all. There's any burning questions, I can stick around for a minute. Hi, Fred. Annie, can you turn the recording off?
That's actually not me. It's one of the people that were recording the breakout.
Wait,
room.
That's fine then.
I think it's me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop recording. I don't know how that happened, but